My wife left me about 3 weeks ago, and it's been an overwhelming experience. She confessed that she cheated on me for 4 years because she felt bored in our marriage. Now, she wants to come back, but I'm feeling really lost right now. We've been married for 17 years and have 3 daughters, aged 15, 13, and 11. We were high school sweethearts, so we've been together for around 23 years. This situation feels surreal and confusing. It all started when my wife came home from work 3 days ago. She seemed upset and frantic. Right before she left, she hastily packed an overnight bag. Our oldest daughter was at home during this time and saw everything unfold. She tried to talk to her mom, but my wife was crying and in such a state of panic that she didn't say much. After that, she just left. Since then, she hasn't responded to any of my texts or calls, which has been incredibly frustrating. I immediately reached out to her parents to see if they knew where she was and what was happening. They finally got back to me and said that my wife is safe with them. They told me to be patient and understanding, but that's all the information they provided. I tried to talk to her sister, her brother, and even one of her close friends from work to get more details. Her brother didn't know anything, and her work friend said that my wife was at work in the morning but vanished by lunchtime 3 days ago. That's the extent of the information I've been able to gather. Now, I'm at home with our 3 daughters, trying to manage everything without their mom. The kids keep asking about their mother, wanting to know what's going on and why she hasn't come home. All I can tell them is that their mom is staying with their grandparents and that we need to be patient. But the uncertainty is eating away at me. I have this strong urge to just pack up the kids and drive to her parents' place, which is only 3 hours away. The waiting is unbearable, and I feel like I'm in limbo. The kids think that we had a huge fight or that we are getting divorced, but that's far from the truth. We've never had big arguments, and they know that. It's hard to explain to them when I don't even understand what's going on myself. I'm looking for some clarity because my emotions are all over the place. I feel worried, scared, angry, and confused all at once. It doesn't make sense that she would just ghost us like this. If something terrible happened, wouldn't your spouse be the first person you'd want to tell? If I were in trouble or upset, she would be the first person I'd turn to for support. Everything feels chaotic, and I'm just sitting here with our girls, trying to keep it together. We're all in the dark, and it's really upsetting. I'm just trying to find a reasonable explanation for why she would leave without a word. In my first update, I mentioned that I'm not familiar with Reddit and how to link my posts, so I might not have provided a lot of details before. Last night was really tough, and I didn't get any sleep. My father-in-law didn't call me, so I felt I had no choice but to contact the police for a wellness check, as many had suggested. This led to even more problems, which I won't detail right now. The officers found out that my wife has been having an affair for at least 2 years, maybe longer. It turns out that the man she was seeing had a heart attack on Tuesday and passed away that same night. I also learned that my mother-in-law and likely my sister-in-law knew about the affair and had been covering for her. I still haven't heard anything from my wife, not even a word for the kids. I'm trying to protect them from the truth for now, but honestly, I don't know what to do next. This situation is incredibly tough, and I'm feeling overwhelmed. If anyone is willing to pray for me and my family, that would mean a lot. I'm trying to find my way through this nightmare. In my second update, I mentioned that I was recommended this group by others. I just joined and have been reading through posts in my spare time, especially at night. Most of my struggles happen at night, a time when the day's chaos settles down, but that's when my mind takes over. I find myself trapped in these waves of depression, which shift into intense anger, and sometimes I feel both emotions at the same time. It's exhausting and makes sleeping nearly impossible. During the day, I walk around like a zombie, trying to get through, but the weight of everything feels heavy. Recently, I've been trying to learn all these acronyms people throw around, as I navigate this tough time. I hit what I now call D-Day last Friday when I discovered that my wife was having what I thought was a 2-year affair. But now it seems it might have lasted even longer than that. The man she was involved with was someone she had known for quite a while and who, tragically, passed away from a heart attack. His death is what led to me discovering the truth. I'm still looking for more information, working with my oldest daughter to piece together everything. There are so many things that I'm not ready to share, and I initially had no intention of continuing to post about my situation. However, with so many people reaching out to offer support and advice, it has turned into a bit of a lifeline for me. It's painful to see that so many others are facing similar struggles. My heart goes out to them. I've met with 2 different lawyers over the last couple of days to talk about my options. I've also reached out to several places for therapy, but the wait times where I live are very long. I'm attempting to follow many of the suggestions people have given me, like avoiding alcohol, but I've never been a drinker, so that part has been easy. I try to prioritize self-care and exercise, and I've always considered myself to be in good shape for my age. But right now, finding the energy to work out is tough. I know many will want more details about the affair, questions like who, what, when, and where, but I'm just not ready to dig into all of that yet. Each day feels like another bomb has exploded in my life, and all I want is some advice to help me start sleeping better. My wife meant everything to me. She was my best friend since high school and the mother of my 3 beautiful daughters. We shared so many moments together, inside jokes and secret handshakes, but now it feels like all of that is just gone. I often find myself reflecting on our years together, the milestones, the laughter, and suddenly I get overwhelmed with depression that feels crippling. It's as if all of it meant nothing to her, and now I have to face a future without her. The thoughts of, how could she do this, creep in, and I get swept away by this intense anger. I scream into my pillow and punch the mattress until my arms ache. It creates a terrible cycle where I only sleep out of sheer exhaustion. Then I wake up suddenly, and the mental battles begin again. Any energy I do have goes toward my girls, who have been trying to care for me as if they were the parents. It's not fair to them. I'm curious how others managed to sleep after they found out about affairs. How did you handle the silence at night, with only your thoughts for company? I've decided that, outside of my daughters, getting better sleep has to be my top priority. But I just can't seem to make it happen. So, I hope you can help. It's been just over a week since my D-Day, and I've learned that my wife's affair was actually more than 4 years long. I am still piecing together the timeline, and it seems that it might have started emotionally before it became physical. I can't help but wonder how the pandemic and lockdowns played a role in all of this, and I might never get those answers. Yesterday, my in-laws made an unexpected visit to see their grandkids. My wife has been staying at their house since this nightmare started, which just feels wrong. They only spent about 15 minutes with the girls before pulling me aside for a private conversation. It was a long talk, one I don't want to go into detail about right now. Basically, my wife wants to come home but is terrified of facing the consequences of her actions. Her parents were also digging pretty hard to find out if I planned on divorcing her and tried to sway me in their direction. I find myself in a really tough spot, torn between the idea of forgiving my wife and trying to rebuild our marriage or just going ahead with the divorce. It's been clear that her parents are embarrassed and ashamed of everything that's happened, but they also want her out of their house. Our conversation was respectful, but inside, I feel lost. I even told them I wasn't sure about my future plans, even though I had made up my mind to get divorced. I think if I tell that to my wife, I won't get the honest answers I desperately need from her. I need her to be brave enough to sit down with me, look me in the eyes, and explain everything that happened. After 17 years of marriage, having been together since high school, we have 3 kids, countless memories, and so much shared history. I want her to be open with me. I want her to sit across from me and share the truth of her affair, from start to finish, and answer all of my questions without holding back. It's important for me that my kids know I gave their mother a chance to speak, a chance to apologize, and a chance for us to handle this like adults. I keep thinking about how to set the right example for them. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but I really want to approach this situation carefully. Legally, I can't stop my wife from coming back home, my lawyer made that really clear. As much as I don't want her back right now, if she decides to return, I can't prevent it. My girls and I have just started to settle into a nice routine without her. So, I made a demand that I know might be hard for her. I said she could come home, but only after she sat down with me in person. I want her to explain everything that's happened during her affair and answer any questions I have without deceit. Then, I think she should apologize to the kids in person, too. They already know what happened, so it's only fair. I realize she doesn't have to follow my demands since she has every legal right to come home whenever she wants. But if she's scared to face us, maybe I can turn that to my advantage. I'm not trying to play games or be manipulative, I just really don't want to rush into living together again. There's a 90-day waiting period for divorce in our state anyway, so her coming home seems inevitable. We'll both need to go back to work eventually, and life goes on no matter how messy things are right now. I just want to buy myself some time to think and get in a better emotional and mental state. My wife has been sending texts to the girls, saying she doesn't want a divorce and apologizing to them. They've shown me the messages, and it's clear that she's feeling the weight of what she's done. It's hitting her hard, especially in the past few days. I wonder if my demand for her to explain herself was foolish. At this point, it seems like she's going to come home sooner rather than later. I feel I've got some confidence in my decisions right now. I'm not shaken by the situation, I knew this would happen. I just want to make the best choices for my daughters and for myself as we move forward. Now, about the weekend, it was pretty rough. My wife came home yesterday, and there was a lot of awkward build-up leading up to it. In our past, whenever she came home, I would greet her with a hug and a kiss, but this time was different. There was this uncomfortable tension hanging in the air. When she walked in, she tried to hug me first, but I instinctively turned away, just like nothing had happened. Once she settled in, I asked her to tell me everything. Again, she said she wasn't ready to talk about it. We had talked on the phone earlier that week, and she gave me the same excuse. I made it clear that the only way I would accept her moving back home was if she truly cared about our family enough to explain why she had been gone for nearly 3 weeks now. But she just kept repeating that she wasn't ready. It was really hard not to yell at her, so I took a few deep breaths to calm myself down. I tried to keep it together, but I didn't succeed, and after what felt like an eternity of silence, I just blurted out what was on my mind. I just blurted it out. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I told her that she'd been having an affair for over 4 years with this guy from work. I said it loud and clear, she was planning to leave me for him. It hit me hard to think about how she ghosted her whole family for this. And then there she was, walking through the door like everything was normal, without even bothering to meet the one condition I had asked her for. I wanted a divorce. That's when things got really strange. The look on her face and the way her body tensed made it clear that she had no clue how much I really knew about her cheating. Her eyes went wide for a second, and then she just stood there in the kitchen, staring down at the floor, completely silent and frozen in place. I expected any kind of reaction from her, anger, tears, maybe even a guilty confession. I thought she might scream at me, blaming me for everything, or maybe she would suggest we sit down and discuss things seriously. But instead, we just stood there for what felt like an eternity without saying a word. It was the weirdest, most uncomfortable moment of my life. She looked lost and confused, and honestly, so did I. I had read all the advice online, taken notes, and practiced what I might say in front of a mirror. I prepared for every possible outcome of this confrontation except for this one, this eerie silence. So, after that long pause, I decided to lay out everything I knew about her affair. Maybe it wasn't the smartest move, but I went ahead and told her all the details I had pieced together, including my own assumptions about how she met this other guy, her sister's role in everything, and what went down during COVID. The whole time, she just kept staring at the floor, not even acknowledging what I was saying. With each word, I felt my anger bubble up. It was hard to keep my voice steady, to stay calm. Finally, after what felt like another long silence stretched between us, my anger shifted to sadness. It hit me hard when I realized the depth of what had happened. I quietly asked her what I did to push her away, if she ever really loved me, and if this other guy was worth all of it. But she just stood there, not moving or saying anything. No tears, no apology, not even a hint of an explanation. She just kept her head down, totally unresponsive. That silence hurt more than the moment I first found out about the affair. I was staring at her, unsure if I should even move. But then things took another turn for the worse. Our daughters had been eavesdropping on the entire thing. I felt incredibly stupid. I had poured all my energy into thinking about their feelings over the past few weeks, trying to put them first, but in that moment, I completely forgot about them. When our oldest daughter rushed downstairs, she let out all her pent-up anger at her mother. It was intense. My wife, clearly overwhelmed, ran upstairs and locked herself in the bedroom. And now, this is where we are. I heard her crying last night for most of the night until I finally fell asleep. Our youngest has tried talking to her, but the rest of us have been keeping our distance. If I can find the courage, I might suggest that she stay with her sister until we can get the divorce finalized. But this is still her home too, and the thought of all of us trying to live together like this feels unbearable. I was wrong about my wife. Everything I thought I knew about our years together, all the memories and significant moments we shared, felt like a lie. I truly believed she would break down and beg for forgiveness when I confronted her. I thought she would come clean about everything to ease her guilt. This is the same woman who once drove back to a farmer's market just because she realized she'd been given too much change. But now, apparently, I don't hold that same value in her eyes. I guess maybe I never did. Now what? Today was unbearably uncomfortable at home. The girls and I tried to carry on as usual, but it was impossible. I just want to fast forward past all this, the divorce, the awkward conversations, the inevitable arguments, and all that drama. For those who have had to live with their unfaithful partners, how did you manage? How did you manage that, especially with kids? I know this is just the beginning of a long journey. I keep seeing all those posts that say it gets better, but but right now, I feel so far from that promise. There isn't a single moment where I don't want to scream because everything feels overwhelming. I'm really trying hard to stay calm and collected for the girls, but I'm honestly not sure if I can keep this up for 3 months. School is going to start up again before this whole situation is resolved, and it feels like this is just my new normal now. I'm grateful for everyone who has been so supportive and interested in what I'm going through. I don't know if the hardest part is yet to come or if it's already behind us, but I really appreciate any tips or support you can offer to help me get through this next phase. Since my wife came home, I've been in such a tough spot. Learning about her affair was like a punch to the gut, and I've been putting on a brave face for our daughters. I try so hard to say the right things and think the right thoughts, but tonight, I just have to be honest. As a lot of you have posted, this whole process comes in waves, and tonight, I was hit by a big one. I lost my cool a little bit. We've filed for divorce, but my wife still hasn't hired a lawyer. I'm trying to be patient and handle things delicately, and I'm actually starting to see a flicker of hope for an uncontested divorce that we could manage ourselves. But after tonight, I'm not so sure anymore. Lately, we've been living together during the week, and my wife goes to her sister's place on Friday nights, returning on Sunday evenings because her work is close to home. It's been a routine of mostly avoiding each other. The girls and I are just trying to carry on like everything is normal while my wife keeps to herself. There are casual interactions between us in the evenings, but my oldest daughter and my wife aren't speaking after some pretty intense arguments, which honestly feels for the best right now. I've been thinking a lot about all the advice I've received from you all and what I've read. I'm working hard on my self-discipline when I'm around her. Keeping it all together takes a ton of strength and willpower. I've been distant and indifferent during our brief conversations, but I've always made sure to remain polite and respectful until tonight. The last couple of Fridays had her coming home from work, quickly packing some things, and leaving for her sisters before I even got back from work. But tonight was different. She was waiting for me in the kitchen when I got home. I tried to just walk past her, but she grabbed my hand gently and asked if this was how I planned to treat her just because she wasn't ready to talk about her affair. This was the first time she mentioned it since everything blew up nearly a month ago. I tried so hard to keep my mouth shut and walk away, but with the girls not home, I felt all that pent-up anger rise up in me, and I just exploded. I don't even know how long I went on, I lost track of time. I raised my voice a few times and got really animated. I broke down completely and poured out every bit of pain, hurt, and anger I had been holding in. I could write thousands of words trying to capture everything I said, but once I started, I just couldn't stop. Of course, I cried and got really emotional. When it was all over, I felt so angry with myself. I had been doing so well at holding it together, but she got to me. I let her get to me, and I knew that might happen. It felt disgusting letting it build up like that. I can only keep so much bottled inside. For the first time, my wife also broke down and started sobbing uncontrollably. Part of me felt guilty for feeling a bit happy to see her hurt the way I did. I wish I didn't care, but there was a certain satisfaction in seeing her finally break down. It felt like a small victory in my struggle. It was strange to see a hint of compassion in her eyes during such a chaotic moment, even amidst the storm of emotions. I was in the middle of letting everything out, and she just stood there, ugly crying, mumbling apologies over and over again. All she could say was, "I'm so sorry." It was frustrating to experience her tears when every fiber of my being was ready to explode. In that moment, I felt overwhelmed and couldn't stick around to hear anything more from her. I left the kitchen before she could collect herself and add anything else to the already tense atmosphere. I told her to please just leave me alone. It was a mess, really. She lingered for a bit, almost as if she expected something more from me, before finally leaving to head back to her sister's house. About 30 minutes later, the girls came home, and it didn't take long for them to sense something was off. I didn't want to talk about it. I wasn't ready to share, and I knew they didn't need to know what had just happened. The two youngest had been making real progress, and I didn't want to ruin that. Telling my oldest about this would only stir up more trouble, and that was the last thing I wanted. I hate all of this. I just hate it. I should have managed to keep my cool. I should have ignored her and just walked right past her without saying a word. Now that I think back, it feels like she was trying to start a conversation about her affair, but she didn't know how to approach it. Obviously, she didn't get far at all because I lost it. I've begun to worry about her, which I know some people might judge me for, but I still can't help it. I don't want her to end up in a bad situation. She's alone and isolated, with almost everyone in her life turning their back on her. Sure, she made choices that led her here, and that's true, but at the end of the day, she's still a human being and a mother to my kids. it feels like a huge step backward for me, and I'm really disappointed in myself. Apologies for this long vent. I ended up calling my brother to rant to him as well. I'm going to try to begin fresh on Monday. I'm just human, after all. Venting about everything felt good in the moment, but now I'm left with this sinking feeling of regret. Should I text my wife and say something, or just leave it alone? I'm such a mess right now. I appreciate everyone who has listened and offered their support. It helps me deal with everything, and I'm thankful for all the advice. In the midst of this chaos, we've all started therapy, which is a step in the right direction, but honestly, this is just incredibly hard. I wanted to provide an update because many people have reached out with concern, and I appreciate it. Most of you are right, things aren't good at all. I haven't had much chance to be online lately and thought about taking a break from the internet entirely, but this past week has thrown me back into a spiral. My wife hasn't really given me any space this week. She's been overly nice and continually apologizing for everything that happened with her affair. It's been exhausting. She cries and then smothers me with her presence, knocking on my door at night wanting to talk. I've ignored her some but did engage when I felt okay enough to talk. It all came to a head on Wednesday night when I finally snapped and told her to just leave me alone. Then, just last night, something happened after a month since my soon-to-be ex-wife came back home following the fallout from her affair. Things have settled into this uncomfortable cohabitation routine. After putting the kids to bed, she came into my room asking for a private talk, which felt different from her usual approach. Initially, I was hesitant, but eventually, we ended up in the garage sitting in my car to avoid any confrontation with the kids around. For almost 3 hours, we talked, and it was filled with lengthy apologies from her. I'm not sure how much of it to share, but I spent the night listening to her sobbing. I couldn't sleep. I was crying too, then getting angry, trying to resist the urge to scream at her, and then back to crying again. I might not respond to anyone right away, I just need to get this off my chest and try to find some sleep. Having her constantly apologizing and begging for another chance made it even harder being around her. I had to take a break and leave for a few hours just to escape the pain. As for her affair, she revealed that her sister introduced her to her affair partner years ago, long before they ever started dating or anything romantic happened. It was all very confusing and painful for me. He had romantic intentions toward her, but the situation was complicated. He was a higher up at a company where she wanted to work, and she did end up getting the job. He gave her an opportunity which made it seem like her desire to switch jobs wasn't tied to their affair. However, once she started working there, she clearly had added motivation. After she got the job, the flirting intensified. It began with texting, then progressed to exchanging pictures and even more texting, eventually turning physical. Just before everything shut down due to COVID, she confided in her sister and thought about coming clean to me. However, she chose to keep it all bottled up, deciding to bury the truth. She later claimed that she went no contact with her affair partner after that, but once lockdowns and restrictions were lifted, he reached out to her again. She resumed talking to him, and that led to the physical aspect of the affair starting up once more as business began to return to normal. She insisted that she tried to end the affair multiple times due to feelings of guilt, but she kept going back to him, so it really never ended. She actually documented everything in detail, writing a 5-page packet filled with her handwritten notes on the timeline of the affair, reading it all to me while answering questions along the way. She lied about many things, claiming she was away on weekend trips with friends, traveling for work, dealing with traffic jams, having family issues, or going shopping. It was an extensive list of lies that I never questioned because I trusted her completely. All those stories were merely a cover for her to be with him. Hearing all of this was painful. It confirmed what I had suspected. Yet, throughout all this deceit, her affection for me didn't seem to wane. She didn't pull away like I read often happens in these situations. The intimacy changed, but it didn't raise any major red flags for me. She admitted to falling in love with this other man and wanting to build a life with him. He was older, divorced, single, and he promised her luxury items, vacations, and an exciting life that she felt she could escape to. She described how bored she was with the mundane routines of family life, and that she found the thrill of being with him irresistible. She was open and emotional as she spoke, which made it harder for me to hear her words. I lost my composure and started crying in the middle of her confession, as you might expect. Once she finished explaining everything, she told me how much she loved me and always had, expressing a willingness to do whatever it took to salvage our marriage. Many people had predicted this response, but to me, it felt rehearsed, like a script she had memorized. I have been with this woman for over half my life, and I could tell when she was being sincere or not. Perhaps I was wrong, but it doesn't change anything. I managed to compose myself better than I had the week before, although I still felt anger rising inside me. I said a few things that weren't kind, including a jab about how her affair partner was seeing multiple women and that she was just one of many he could easily discard. This comment clearly upset her. A flood of thoughts rushed through my mind as I prepared for the moment she would eventually confess. I had hundreds of one-liners that I wished I could have said in that emotional moment. There was one question I knew I had to ask: if her affair partner was still around and she had to choose between him and me, who would she pick? She hesitated, saying it wasn't a fair question. I pushed her for an answer, and eventually, she mumbled that she would choose me. My response was to point out her hesitation as the reason I was choosing to divorce her, as it felt like another lie. That made her sob even harder, and after that, she didn't say much. We sat in the car for a while, her tears flowing, but I was exhausted. I told her that we were getting a divorce and that we owed it to our daughters to maintain a civil relationship so we could be good parents in their lives. I added that after all the pain she had caused me, I hoped she would be decent enough to make the divorce fair and amicable. I believed that would prove she truly loved me. The final words I said, I had taken from somewhere online, and they felt fitting for the moment. I took something I found online, and I really hope you can see that I'm not a bad person. I never intended to hurt her, it just felt like it was the only way to end things. When I was with her, I meant every word I said and did. I leaned over, kissed her gently on the forehead, and told her I would have loved her forever. Then, I stepped out of the car and went straight to bed. That was the last moment we shared together. Naturally, I couldn't sleep at all that night, and now here I am again, wide awake and unable to find peace. I'm unsure of what the future holds. Her chance to fight against the divorce has passed, which is one silver lining I guess, but I still haven't spoken to my lawyer. I find myself crying again, sinking deeper into feelings of sadness and anger. Hearing everything last night was really tough, and honestly, I wish I didn't have to experience it at all. Now that I think about it, there's a chance she could have made it all up. Who really knows? It just seemed to fit so well with everything I had been piecing together over the past month. It's like this situation just doesn't end. I have a few good days where I feel like I'm regaining my strength, but then something else happens that pulls me right back down. Time feels strange, it feels both like it's been months and just a few days at the same time. I'm going to try to sleep, but it's hard. Picture this: the love of your life, the only woman you've ever truly loved or kissed, tells you that she cheated on you for more than 4 years. And why? Not because she fell out of love, not because there were issues between us, not because we drifted apart, or anything like that. No, it was simply because she was bored. I can't even tell if that makes the situation worse or better. Thanks for listening and being there through all of this. It's been a really tough couple of nights, and things are feeling pretty bleak.